Outliers, The Story of Success, Malcolm Gladwell. Outliers. Chapter 2, The 10,000 Hours Rule. In Hamburg, we had to play for 8 hours. The University of Michigan opened its new computer center in 1971 in a brand new building on Beale Avenue in Ann Arbor. With beige brick exterior wall and a dark glass front. The university's enormous mainframe computer stood in the middle of the vast white room, looking, as one faculty member remembered, like one of the last scenes in the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. Up to the side were dozens of key punching machines, what fast in those days for computer terminals. In 1971, this was state of the art. The University of Michigan had one of the most advanced computer science programs in the world, and over the course of the computer center's life, thousands of students passed through that white room, and the most famous of whom was a gawky teenager named Bill Joy. Joy came to the University of Michigan the year the computer center opened. He was 16. He was tall and very thin, with a mop of unruly hair. He had been voted most studious student by his graduating class in North Farmington High School outside Detroit, which, as he put it, meant that he was no date nerd. He had thought he might end up as a biologist or a mathematician. But late in his freshman year, he stumbled across the computer center and he was hooked. From that point on, the computer center was his life. He programmed whenever he could. Joey got a job with a computer science professor, so he could program over the summer. In 1975, he enrolled graduate school at the University of California at Berkeley. There, he buried himself even deeper in the world of computer software. During the oral exam for his PhD, he made up a particularly complicated algorithm on the fly that, as one of his many admirers has written, so stunned his examiners that one of them later compared the experience to Jesus confounding his elders. Working in collaboration with a small group of programmers, Joy took on the task of rewriting Unix, which was a software system developed by AT&T for mainframe computers. Joy's version was very good. It was so good, in fact, that it became and remained the operating system on which, literally, millions of computers around the world run. If you put your Mac in that funny mode, where you can see the code, Jay said, I see things that I remember typing in 25 years ago. And do you know who wrote much of the software that allows you to access the internet? Bill Joy. After graduating from Berkeley, Joy co-founded the Silicon Valley firm Sun Microsystems, which was one of the most critical players in the computer revolution. There he rewrote around another computer language, Java, and his legend grew still further. Among Silicon Valley insiders, Joy is spoken of with as much awe as someone like Bill Gates of Microsoft. He is sometimes called the Edison of the Internet. As the Yale computer scientist David Gallner said, Bill Joy is one of the most influential people in the modern history of computing. The story of Bill Joy's genius has been told many times, and the lesson is always the same. Here was a world that was the purest of meritocracy. Computer program didn't operate as a worldwide network, where you got ahead because of money and connection. It was a wide open field in which all participants were judged solely on their talents and their accomplishment. It was a world there was a best man won, and Jay was clearly one of those best men. It would be easier to accept that version of event. However, if we hadn't just looked at the hockey and soccer players, there was supposed to be pure meritocracy as well. Only it wasn't. It was a story of how the outliers in a particular field reached their lofty status through a combination of ability, opportunity, and utterly arbitrary advantage. Is it possible the same pattern of special opportunities operate in the real world as well? Let's go back over the story of Bill Joy and find out. 2. For almost a generation, psychologists around the world had been engaged in a spirited debate over a question that most of us would consider to have been settled years ago. The question is this. Is there such a thing in innate talent? The obvious answer is yes. Not every hockey player is born in January and playing at the professional level. Only some do. The innately talented ones. Achievement is talent plus preparation. The problem with this view is that the closer psychologists look at the career of the gift, the smaller the role innate talent seems to play, and the bigger the role preparation seems to play. Exhibit A in the talent argument is studied on in the early 1990s by the psychologist K. Anders Ericsson and two colleagues at Berlin's Elite Academy of Music. With the help of the academy professors, they divide the school's violinists into three groups. In the first group were the stars, the students with the potential to become world-class soloists. In the second were those judged to be merely good. In the third were students who were unlikely to ever play professionally and who intended to be music teachers in the public school system. All of the violinists were then asked the same question. Over the course of your entire career, ever since you first picked up the violin, how many hours have you practiced? Everyone from all three groups started playing at roughly the same age, around 5 years old. In those first few years, everyone practiced roughly the same amount, about 2 or 3 hours a week. But when the students were around the age of 8, real difference started to emerge. The students who would end up the best in their class began to practice more than everyone else. 6 hours a week by age 9, 8 hours a week by age 12, 16 hours a week of age 14, and up until by the age of 20 they were practicing. That's it. Purposely and single-mindedly playing their instrument with the intent to get better. At over 30 hours a week. In fact, by the age of 20, the elite performer had reached talent's 10,000 hours of practice. By contrast, merely good students had totaled 8,000 hours. And the future music teachers had the total just over 4,000 hours. Erickson and his colleagues then compared the amateur pianist with professional pianist. The same pattern emerged. The amateur never practiced more than about 3 hours a week over the course of their childhood, and by the age of 20, they had totaled 2,000 hours of practice. The professional, on the other hand, steadily increased their practice time every year until by the age of 20, they, like the violinist, had reached 10,000 hours. The striking thing about Erickson's study is that he and his colleagues couldn't find any naturals, musicians who floated effortlessly to the top while practicing a fraction of the time their peers did. Nor could they find any grinds, people who worked harder than everyone else, yet just didn't have what it takes to break the top talent. Their research suggests that once a musician has enough ability to get into a top music school, the thing that distinguishes one performer from another is how hard he or she worked. That's it. And what's more, the people at the very top don't work just harder or even much harder than everyone else. They work much, much harder. The idea and excellence, the performing of a complex task requires a critical minimum level of practice, surface again and again in study of expertise. In fact, researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise: 10,000 hours.